If you grew up watching television in the 1970s and 80s, the names Lenny and Squiggy instantly bring a smile. They were loud, hilarious, and unforgettable. Two goofy guys who'd burst through Laverne and Shirley's apartment door with a ridiculous entrance and a punchline that always landed. Played by Michael McKean and David L. Lander, the pair became instant fan favorites on Laverne and Shirley. Behind their slapstick humor, though, was a story of real-life friendship, deep creative chemistry, and later, heartbreaking struggle. Recently, Cindy Williams and Penny Marshall opened up about the truth behind those years, the laughter, the love, and the pain that came long after the cameras stopped rolling. Before Laverne and Shirley became a cultural phenomenon, the world of Happy Days was expanding. Cindy Williams and Penny Marshall had already made their mark as Shirley Feeney and Laverne DeFazio, two single women navigating life and work in Milwaukee. But it was when Michael McKean and David L. Lander joined the cast as Lenny Kosnowski and Andrew Squigman that magic truly happened. McKean and Lander had met years earlier at Carnegie Mellon University, where they created the characters for a comedy routine. Their chemistry was instantaneous. Two oddballs with heart, humor, and a connection that audiences couldn't resist. When producer Gary Marshall saw their act, he knew they had something special, and television history was born. When the four actors came together on screen, something rare happened. The chemistry wasn't just scripted, it was real. Penny and Cindy, both sharp comedic performers, found themselves constantly trying not to laugh at Lenny and Squiggy's antics. Whether it was Squiggy's squeaky voice or Lenny's awkward grin, the boys brought an energy that elevated every scene. Cindy once recalled that filming with them was like trying to perform while holding your breath. You never knew what they'd do next. Penny agreed, saying, "You could give Lenny and Squiggy one line, and they'd make it unforgettable." Their improv skills, honed from years on stage, turned every taping into a live comedy masterclass. Off-camera, the Laverne and Shirley cast shared a deep friendship, but also the stresses of fame. The show was one of the most-watched series in America, and its stars were suddenly household names. With success came pressure, and Penny Marshall often clashed with network executives over creative direction. Yet through it all, Lenny and Squiggy remained the glue that brought everyone laughter when things got tough. Michael and David's friendship off-screen mirrored their on-screen partnership, loyal, funny, and unbreakable. Cindy later said, "Even when the cameras weren't rolling, they were Lenny and Squiggy. They lived to make people smile." As the 1980s arrived, Laverne and Shirley began to lose momentum. Cast changes, creative fatigue, and behind-the-scenes tensions led to its eventual end in 1983. For many fans, it felt like saying goodbye to a family they'd grown up with. Michael McKean went on to have a thriving career, starring in This Is Spinal Tap and later in Better Call Saul, while David L. Lander faced a far more difficult journey. In 1984, David was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a condition he kept private for many years. When Cindy and Penny learned about his illness, they were heartbroken. Penny once said, "David was always the strongest guy in the room, even when he couldn't walk anymore." David's struggle with multiple sclerosis became one of Hollywood's most quietly inspiring stories. For decades, he continued to work, lending his voice to animated shows, writing books, and advocating for others with MS. His friend Michael McKean never left his side, often visiting him and collaborating on small projects when David's health allowed. Cindy Williams later recalled visiting David and being struck by his optimism. "He'd crack jokes about his condition," she said, "because that's who he was, laughter was his weapon." Penny added, "Lenny and Squiggy weren't just characters, they were David and Michael's love letter to friendship." Even in pain, David continued to embody that love. As years went by, Cindy Williams and Penny Marshall were often asked about the chemistry of the original cast. In interviews, both women spoke tenderly about Lenny and Squiggy, often tearing up when talking about David Lander's courage. Cindy once shared, "There was something magical about those two. It wasn't rehearsed, it was just lightning." Penny, in her usual candid tone, said, "They made our show what it was. Without Lenny and Squiggy, Laverne and Shirley wouldn't have been as fun, or as human." Behind her humor, though, Penny carried the bittersweet weight of losing close friends from those years, something she would later admit still haunted her. When fans remember Laverne and Shirley, they don't just remember the slapstick or the famous Schlemiel, Schlemazel chant. They remember the bond between four friends who made us laugh through life's ups and downs. Lenny and Squiggy became symbols of loyalty and humor in the face of chaos. They weren't glamorous or sophisticated, but they were genuine, and that's why audiences loved them. When David Lander passed away in 2020 at the age of 73, tributes poured in from around the world. Michael McKean wrote, "A first friend and a true one. I'll miss him terribly." Cindy and Penny both sent private messages to his family, choosing to grieve quietly but deeply. Before her own passing in 2018, Penny Marshall recorded a podcast interview where she reflected on the people who shaped her life. When asked about Laverne and Shirley, she smiled and said, "That show was a family. And Lenny and Squiggy, they were the crazy uncles." She admitted that she often rewatched episodes just to relive the laughter they shared. "We didn't know at the time how big it was. We were just having fun." Penny's words now feel almost prophetic, a farewell not just to a show, but to an era when comedy was about heart. She added softly, "If laughter really is the best medicine, then David and Michael were doctors." After Penny's passing, Cindy Williams became the last surviving core member of the Laverne and Shirley cast. In interviews leading up to her own death in 2023, she often reminisced about those years and the bond they all shared. She spoke of David Lander's bravery, Michael McKean's loyalty, and Penny's incredible spirit. "We were all part of something that changed television," she said. "But more than that, we were family." Her voice would sometimes crack when speaking about Lenny and Squiggy, saying that even decades later, she could still hear their silly greetings echoing in her mind. "They were joy personified," she said. "You don't forget people like that." Few fans realized that even after the show ended, Cindy and Penny stayed in touch with both Michael and David. They'd send holiday cards, check in by phone, and share stories about old episodes. Cindy once revealed that they even discussed doing a reunion special in the early 2000s, but David's health prevented it. Still, the love between them never faded. In one rare interview, Michael McKean said, "When we'd all get together, it was like no time had passed. Lenny and Squiggy were still alive in all of us." That bond, rooted in friendship, laughter, and shared struggle, outlived Hollywood, fame, and even time itself. Today, the legacy of Laverne and Shirley, and the unforgettable duo of Lenny and Squiggy, lives on in the hearts of millions. Cindy Williams and Penny Marshall, before their own passings, reminded the world that true friendship never really ends. It just changes form. Their words about Lenny and Squiggy weren't just tributes to two fictional characters, they were tributes to the real men behind them, and to the love that bound them all. As fans continue to rediscover the show through reruns and streaming, the laughter still rings true. Somewhere, Lenny and Squiggy are still bursting through that door, cracking jokes, making everyone smile. And Cindy and Penny? They're smiling right back, grateful for the laughter that never fades.